As far as I'm concerned, he was the greatest show on earth. That man was something special.
George Foreman's death created a vacuum of information, a major figure gone, and the facts surrounding his final moments did not align with public expectations. What followed were unclear reports, guarded statements, and a silence that signaled more than privacy. The people closest to him avoided questions. The gaps point to a final struggle that never reached the surface. And today, we move past the public narrative and confront the truth hidden in his last chapter. Before we uncover the mystery behind George Foreman's death, it's important to understand the man whose life stunned the world as much as his passing. Who exactly was George Foreman, and why did his death leave so many questions unanswered? The rise from the street to global stage. Long before George Foreman became a household name, he was just a boy trying to survive in Houston, Texas. Born on January 10, 1949, in Marshall, Texas, he grew up in Houston's Fifth Ward, one of the city's toughest and poorest neighborhoods at the time. He was one of 7 children, and life at home was anything but easy. Money was always tight, the streets were dangerous, and the future often felt uncertain. His mother, Nancy Foreman, took different jobs just to be able to provide for the family, while his stepfather, Jerome Foreman, did his best to keep things together. Growing up in a family and neighborhood like that, George learned quickly that being strong and tough was not a choice, but something he had to be just to survive. As a teenager, George's size and aggressive nature made him stand out, but not always for the right reasons. He wasn't interested in school, and by his early teens, he had already dropped out. He spent his days getting into street fights and trouble with the local authorities. Looking back, George admitted that he was always angry, restless, and unsure of where his life was headed. But then, George's life changed when he joined the Job Corps, a federal program created to give young, troubled kids direction and structure. It was there he met Doc Broadus, an instructor who saw what no one else saw in him. He saw more than just his anger and size and recognized his potential. Doc encouraged George to try boxing, not just as a sport, but as a way to channel his energy and give his life direction. At first, George wasn't sure about boxing. The ring felt nothing like the streets he knew so well. But the moment he put on the gloves and stepped inside the ring, something clicked, and the moment changed everything for him. The energy that once got him into trouble now had a purpose, and for the first time, he felt the fire inside him could mean something. Boxing gave him focus, and more than that, it gave him hope. By 1967, George was fully committed. He moved fast through the amateur boxing ranks, and everyone noticed his raw power and determination. Just a year later, he made the United States Olympic team and headed to Mexico City for the 1968 Games. In the Cusco heavyweight division, he fought with the same intensity that had carried him through the streets and the Job Corps. When he beat Soviet boxer Jonas Chapoulis to win the gold medal, it was more than just a win. It was a statement. A kid from Houston's tough streets had climbed to the world stage, standing tall on the Olympic podium with the American flag over his shoulders. After the Olympics, George went professional, and his rise was rapid. He became undefeated in his early fights, knocking down opponent after opponent with his devastating punches. Every bout reinforced his power and precision, leaving fans and fighters alike in awe. By 1973, George had earned a shot at the heavyweight title, and the world was waiting to see if he could deliver the knockout that would make him champion. His opponent was Joe Frazier, the reigning champion, who had already defeated legends like Muhammad Ali. The fight took place in Kingston, Jamaica, and George wasted no time showing the world how unstoppable he was in the ring. He knocked Frazier down 6 times in just 2 rounds, claiming the WBA and WBC heavyweight titles. The boxing world was shocked, and from that moment, George Foreman was seen as a dominating force in the heavyweight division. At just 24, George Foreman became the heavyweight champion of the world, and from that moment, he was unstoppable. His size and raw punching power made him a nightmare in the ring, and his unrelenting style left opponents on edge even before the first bell. By the mid-70s, his knockout streak was so dominant that it seemed almost no one could stand against him. However, beyond the boxing ring, George had a presence that set him apart from other fighters. While many thrived on media attention and showmanship, he stayed focused and grounded. He let his fists do the talking, rarely smiled, and made few public appearances. When he did speak in interviews, his words were always short and straight to the point. His calm, almost cold demeanor only added to his mystique and drew fans to him. George defended his heavyweight title with precision and confidence. He defeated the likes of Jose Roman and Ken Norton, and with every bout, he solidified his reputation as the most feared man in boxing. In fact, at the time, it felt like no one in boxing could match his power, speed, and raw strength, a force that seemed almost unstoppable in the ring. But everything shifted the moment he stepped into the ring with Muhammad Ali for his title defense. The showdown, famously billed the Rumble in the Jungle, had everyone glued to their screens. Ali was the underdog, older and thought to be past his prime, while George was the unstoppable champion, younger, stronger, and expected to dominate. The tension in the arena was electric, and fans everywhere waited to see if George's fists would once again make history. But what happened next stunned the world and changed George Foreman forever. No one saw it coming, and it would rewrite everything people thought they knew about the unstoppable champion. From the opening bell, it was clear that George wanted to prove why he was the heavyweight champion. He pressed forward aggressively, throwing punches that seemed unstoppable. Round after round, his fists landed with crushing power and precision. But Ali, on the other hand, used a different strategy. Ali leaned back on the ropes, covered up, and let George throw the heavy shots. It was part of a careful and well-calculated plan. Round after round, George pressed forward, trying to break through the guard. But as the pace slowed, Ali stayed patient. Then, in the 8th round, he stepped off the ropes, let his hands go, and landed a clean combination. George went down, and for the first time in his professional career, he lost by knockout. It was a moment that stayed with him long after the fight ended. Now, many people thought the defeat would send him into hiding or make him step away for a long time, but that did not happen. George returned home, went back to the gym, and stayed grounded. He won again, defeating fighters like Ron Lyle in a brutal knockout and taking down Joe Frazier for the second time. He used his jab with control and pushed forward with the same strength that made him a threat in every round. But here's the thing. While many people thought the loss didn't affect him, it actually did. He still looked like the same heavyweight who once dominated the division, but those closest to him noticed a shift. The fire that once pushed him through every round was no longer there. He still trained hard. He still fought to win. Yet his approach seemed different, almost like he was carrying something new with him into the ring. Some fans later suggested that the knockout had changed his mindset, although George did not say much about it at the time. Reporters continued to describe him as one of the strongest punchers in the heavyweight class. Crowds still filled arenas to see him, but George himself seemed more reflective, like a fighter beginning to understand that the loss was not just a result of his record. It was the start of something deeper, something that would guide the next stage of his life. And by the time George faced Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico in 1977, he was already standing at a turning point in his life. The fight itself was challenging, but what happened afterward changed everything. In the locker room, George collapsed, completely worn out. Some people said it was heat stroke. George later described it as a near-death experience and a reckoning moment. Whatever the reason, that moment made him stop and think. It forced him to slow down and look at the life he had been living. It was not just his body giving out, it was a wake-up call. And from that moment on, he knew he had to step away from boxing and begin a different kind of journey, one that would shape the next chapter of his life. Before long, George surprised everyone by announcing his retirement in 1977. He was just 28 years old, and many fans were confused. How could a heavyweight champion, still strong and at the top of his game, Walk away from the sport? The answer went beyond boxing. George felt he had been given a second chance at life, and he didn't want to waste it. After he stepped away from boxing, he embraced a completely new direction. George gave his life to God and became a born-again Christian. Soon after, he became an ordained minister and even opened the Church of the Lord Jesus Christ in Houston, and he created the George Foreman Youth and Community Center to help young people who were growing up with the same struggles he had faced. The man who once settled his battles with his fists was now settling them with guidance and support. This was not a rumor or speculation. George spoke openly about feeling called to this path. During this time, his personal life also found stability. In 1985, he married Mary Joan Martelli, the woman who would become his lifelong partner. With her, he raised a big blended family of 12 children. George, in his unique way, gave all 5 of his sons the same name. There was George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, and George VI. Some people teased him for it, but he always said it was his way of keeping the family united under one legacy. His daughters, Natalia, Leola, Frida, Michi, Georgetta, Isabella, and Courtney, each had their own personalities and gifts, and George often said they brought balance to his home. For a while, George lived in this new world, far away from the bright lights of boxing. He preached, mentored young people, and focused on building a stronger family. To many, it looked like he had closed the chapter on his fighting career forever. But life had one more unexpected twist waiting for him. But just when the world thought George Foreman was done, he did something no one saw coming. What happened next stunned fans, the boxing world, and even those closest to him. In 1987, at 38 years old, George stunned everyone by announcing he was coming back to the ring after nearly 10 years away. Yes, his body had changed, and his reflexes weren't as quick, but he didn't let that stop him. But here's the thing, this comeback wasn't just about defeating opponents, it was about proving something to himself. And of course, he wasn't just after titles. He wanted a second chance to show the world who he had become. However, critics doubted him and laughed at the idea that a man in his late 30s, out of the sport for 10 years, could compete with a new generation of heavyweights. Fans were skeptical too, but George stepped back into the gym and committed himself fully, treating every punch, every round, and every sparring session with purpose. Slowly, with every bout, he began to prove critics wrong. His style had evolved. He no longer relied purely on raw power. Instead, he used patience, technique, and his knowledge of the ring to stay a step ahead of his opponents. Each victory reminded the world that while youth fades, true skill, heart, and determination never leave a fighter. And by the early 1990s, George had worked his way back into contention for the heavyweight title. Along the way, he faced tough opponents and suffered some close losses, but each fight earned him respect for his resilience and determination. During this time, George also found success outside the ring. The George Foreman Grill, launched in the early 1990s, quickly became a household name. At first, people doubted that a former heavyweight champion could sell kitchen appliances, but the grills sold millions. In fact, George's business skills soon earned as much attention as his skill in boxing. It was another way he proved that reinvention was possible. Throughout all of this, George became even more private than before. He still granted the occasional interview or appeared in public, but he no longer sought attention and kept a much lower profile than in his early years. He's now focused on family, faith, and purpose. Fans saw him as a mentor, a man shaped by life's lessons, who still carried the charm, humility, and humor that made him approachable. Then, in 1994, at 45 years old, George achieved what many thought was impossible. He faced Michael Moorer for the WBA and IBF heavyweight titles and knocked him out to win, becoming the oldest heavyweight champion in history. His victory stunned the sports world, and his comeback became one of the most remarkable stories in boxing. It proved that faith, discipline, and experience could overcome even the toughest odds. A few years later, from the early 2000s into the 2010s, George gradually stepped away from both boxing and business, choosing instead to focus on his ministry and family. Over time, he became a symbol of resilience, reinvention, and purpose. The fighter who once dominated the ring had transformed into a man whose influence reached far beyond sport. Over time, George began to step even further away from the spotlight. He aged gracefully, often seen smiling and carrying the warm, friendly spirit that defined his later years. As the months passed, sightings of him became rare, and this silence led to speculations among fans. People began talking about possible declining health, wondering if something was changing behind the scenes, yet nothing was ever confirmed. Unfortunately, George passed away in March 2025 at 76 years old. The announcement stunned his longtime fans and everyone who had followed his journey. Fans who had grown uneasy over the fading sightings were still not prepared for this. Tributes poured in from around the world, and headlines filled up with his old photos and unforgettable fight moments. People celebrated the long and extraordinary life he lived. Yet one question lingered: what truly led to the legend's death? Even though his family announced that he passed away in a Houston hospital, they shared almost nothing beyond that. There were no clear details, no medical explanation, and surprisingly, no autopsy report made public. It didn't end there. The funeral arrangements were also kept completely private, which only added to the confusion. Before long, fans began to question everything. With so little information about his final days, rumors and speculations spread quickly, and many believed something much bigger was being kept from the public. So what really happened behind the scenes in the final chapter of George Foreman's life? Why did his family choose not to reveal how he died? And was there something they were protecting or keeping from the public? Mystery uncovered. Now, years before George passed, there were events that many believe may have shaped the final years of his life. First, in 2019, tragedy struck when one of his daughters, Frida, passed away. Her loss affected George deeply, even though he rarely showed it in public. He devoted himself to honoring her memory through his ministry and caring for his family. But behind closed doors, the grief weighed heavily on him. Then, in 2024, there were reports circulating that George had silently listed his $10 million home in Huffman, Texas, for sale. Fans and the media immediately speculated. Was he moving to a smaller home, relocating, or facing financial difficulties? Regardless, many believe something serious is going on behind the scenes. At the same time, his rare public appearances only deepened the mystery. People noticed his silence and distance from the spotlight before the news of his passing. Even though he had never been a man who sought public attention, the private way his family handled everything naturally made questions and speculation pile up. But after many months of speculation, the truth has finally come to light. Sources close to George's family reportedly confirmed that in his final years, he had been silently dealing with a rare neurological condition. The exact name of the illness was never officially made public, but those close to him said it affected his movement, strength, and overall energy. But here's the thing, this isn't uncommon among boxers, especially former heavyweight champions. Experts on aging athletes have long pointed out that long boxing careers can put unusual strain on the body and nervous system. Years of taking hits, intense training, and drastic weight changes can lead to conditions that appear later in life, often silently and without warning. For George, it seems the physical toll of decades in the ring, combined with normal aging and possibly other factors, shaped his final years in ways only his family truly understood. Looking back now, fans and the public began to understand George's final years in a different way. What once caused wild guesses now appeared as a story of careful planning and privacy. The sale of his home, his rare public appearances, and his family's silent approach were not signs of trouble. Instead, they showed a choice to protect George's dignity, keep things private, and take care of him in his last years. And while the world mourned the loss of a legendary fighter, it became clear that George Foreman's legacy was about more than just his knockout wins or record-setting comebacks. It was in how he lived, how he faced grief and illness, and how he chose privacy over attention. The story of his final years reminds us that even in retirement, even away from cameras and crowds, the life of a true champion continues to inspire, silently but powerfully. Beyond the titles and the spotlight, what legacy did George Foreman leave the world when his story finally came to an end? Today, George Foreman's name stays with you. Whether you are a longtime boxing fan or have only seen him on television, he lived so many lives that it sometimes felt like the world was watching several stories unfold in one man, and these are what make his legacy truly unforgettable. Beyond the ring, George connected with people in ways few athletes ever do. For example, the George Foreman grill turned him into a household name around the world, selling millions of units and giving him a second life as a businessman. At the same time, he shared his wisdom through books and interviews, revealing a thoughtful, caring side that contrasted with his fierce image in the ring. Also, in 2002, The Ring magazine honored George Foreman as one of the 25 greatest fighters of the past 80 years and recognized him as the 9th greatest puncher of all time. His life became a testament to reinvention, resilience, and inspiration, showing the world that a lasting legacy is measured not only by victories in the ring, but also by the impact left on people's lives. And as we celebrate George's legendary life, one question still lingers. Could there still be details about his final years that have yet to come to light, waiting to shake everything we thought we knew? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.